Is it one for a storyteller to have an issue with a major genre? Because after really thinking about this and going over this a couple times, I think they do have an issue with this genre. And now, there are few desires that are common to all of us as humans, at least to the point of having major industries built around finding answers or solutions or even just talking about them to people. And these are money, health, and relationships. Now, while all these fall into basic survival needs, like money is what we need to provide for things, or it's like whatever we kind of can't provide for ourselves, we will generally use money or something to barter with. And so we're very concerned with money. And then with health, again, survival is very hard to survive when you're sick. So again, we kind of think about health a lot. And again, these are major industries that are built around. Like if you have a niche in one of these, you will probably be making money. And yeah, I know it's my attempt at a fruit basket, but and then you have the relationships. Again, we need each other. We can't really do all things by ourselves. While it's like jack of all trades, master of none, often better than a master one, we kind of do need the master one, even if it's for one job and we have to pay them for it. We kind of need someone else. We can't do it all by ourselves. We can't be the one man is an island thing. But today I want to particularly focus on relationships, and mainly on the concept of finding the one and how many of us may actually be going about it in the wrong way. So, my friend, welcome to another episode of Advice That Sticks. Now, we as a society almost seem obsessed with finding the one, that person who is our soulmate, almost fated or destined to be with us. And they're just perfect for us in every way. And that they will just click with and be totally in sync with us. Are you seeing the problem yet? Because there is a glut of romantic comedies, dramas, reality TV shows, and probably even more things that I can't name right now that are all about the chase. I mean, again, so many romantic comedies are pretty much boy meets girl, and they're going back and forth on all these kinds of things. And sometimes it may even be a long running series where it's like there's this will they or won't they thing. And it's like, well, they may not be together all the time. It's like, or they may sometimes try each other, but then they have to, or they find someone else because this person is wanting a break. And then this person is then pining for them. And then rather than do that, they decide to meet someone else, but then they break up and so on and so forth. And it goes back and forth. Or there's a misunderstanding and that causes a bunch of drama or whatever. Or you have the reality TV shows where you get like 20 some contestants to kind of be whittled down to one. And how many of those movies end when they finally just decide to be in a relationship? Or the last one standing has finally done the last rose or however it goes. And we then maybe get a flash forward to the wedding if there is one at all, because then sometimes a couple might not even be together a month later. And now there's obviously market for it. I mean, these shows tend to get multiple seasons or sequels or whatever. Well, actually, some of these comedies don't really get sequels, but I guess you get the point. Again, they will constantly do the same things. They will constantly do stuff focused on the chase. But they may actually be doing us a disservice in a way, because we can become so focused on something that is at the beginning stages that we don't really think about what's coming after. Living together, like once you start to share your space with a person, you kind of can often find yourself with actually less than half of the space you had together, if not in a new space altogether. And you're now having to learn how to share that space and do it with someone who's even closer than a roommate. And you now have a shared schedule and everything. And you also have income. I think, like, I feel like I heard that like a lot of divorces are based on money issues. Well, that's one of the things, because it's like something we don't like to talk about, but we have to talk about it. And so you now have, and you have people like that are spenders who will just spend, getting together with savers who are focused on the long term and so forth. And they have two very different value systems. And it's kind of like, what do you expect to happen? You need to talk about it and work together on a shared thing. And again, on a shared thing, we then have kids and pets, where you are now responsible for living beings together. And you might have one person saying, okay, we need to lay down some ground rules and present a solid front, while the other one is like, we just need to lead with love. Lead with love. And it's like, that can be a whole mess, because then you have to kind of pick one thing and then run with it. Because once you kind of have that breaking point, you're probably going to be pitted against each other at some point. And then we have the legacy, like we may have a vision and dreams for our life, but then when we add someone into our life in the relationship, we now have their vision and their dreams for their life, and we have to find some way to bring it all together. And it's this whole deal that's not really focused on. And instead, it often seems like we almost try to speedrun the process. Instead, we're looking for all the shortcuts to find that intimacy we crave. It's like we think we can get the perfect match for us just by swiping left a couple hundred times and then finally swiping right on the one person that seems to fit everything we look for. But again, we kind of actually have things where we can get whole series of a will they or won't they couple that just get together at the end of like over 10 years sometimes, or generally 5, I think, but it's like it takes a long time to get that point. And honestly, it almost, to me, it feels like a reward when a series will actually give you a few seasons where they are a couple, where they are together. Just because it seems sort of rare, I guess. Because it's not just that, oh, now they get to be perfect together. In fact, it may actually lead to more drama, as now their character development, whereas they used to be two different characters before, they're now kind of linked intrinsically. So they now have a whole different way of playing off each other and bouncing off each other. And so it just creates a whole new set of drama. Again, it's not as it might not seem as exciting as a chase, but it can be just as dramatic and rewarding for the characters in exploring this new side of them. Because they are now bringing something out of each other that may not have been seen in any other relationship. But I guess that can kind of ruin the fantasy of having that perfect one for us, because you now have true and perfect beings, whereas you kind of had the one person seeking the perfect love interest, kind of, but now it's actually kind of real in a way. It's much more relatable and so much in a way. And that's probably why some writers may shy away from it, because it takes the fantasy out of it, as I said. And that's kind of why I think this episode's piece of advice may be just what we need to kind of reframe how we pursue the one. And this is kind of, funnily enough, one where I actually remember more about where I was when it was said than what actually led up to it, although it probably had something to do with relationships. But I was in the back of the sanctuary at my church, close by the sound booth there, and I was talking with my pastor. And again, I don't remember how exactly it came up, but he ended up turning this issue of finding the one completely on his head, as he described how it's not about finding the one, it's about two people committing to be the one for each other. So if you said that the problem of finding the one is that it's very one-sided focused, you'd be right. It's a one-person perspective on something where there are two people. And the thing is, we now have two imperfect people who have probably tried to find the one again, or may have been pursuing that, but now they have each other. And again, we tend to go blinders in a sense, or have these blinders on in a lot of things where we think someone is perfect, but then we actually realize that they are just as imperfect as we are. But then we kind of almost want that perfection, and it's kind of like life, or in general, it doesn't really work in that. We can't be perfect. And I think the thing that a lot of us miss in kind of seeking out that person who's perfect for us is kind of, we should probably go with the principle in that to have a friend, you must be a friend. So why do we often think that we can get someone who is everything that we wish for without being what they wish for? And now again, it's very easy to come up with this list of all the traits we are looking for. They need to be such and such a height, this good looking, make this much money, be this athletic, be this intelligent. But how often do we take stock of what they are looking for? Because basically what I'm saying if your heart is really set on finding a 10, you better make sure that you add up to a 10. Now I guess another way to explain this is to think about kind of audience of customers, where you need to find out what your customers are actually looking for, rather than what you think you are looking for, because we often get that tower perspective of that we know everything and we might have exactly what we're looking at and it must be right. Whereas if we talk to actual people who are buying our things, we may get completely different answers than what our direct reports are telling us. So again, it's kind of important to kind of realize where information is coming from and also how to find it. And it's kind of that close inspection that can really make a lot of things, because we may find someone who seems to be everything we wished for, but then upon closer inspection, we find out that they're actually not what we thought at all. And they don't even want to commit to being the one for us that we may be willing to be for them. Or we may find out someone that we never expected is more than willing to be the one for us. And we just only had to ever say, I'll be the one for you. At least that's my perspective on things. But I'm probably better with the principles and theory than actual practice, going from my experience. So if you think I got this right, or maybe I completely missed the point, let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see more episodes of I Said Stits, I have compiled them into a playlist for your convenience. Anyway, I'm Jonah. You've been watching Lionsman Media, where we celebrate stories and what they teach us. Talk to you later, and have a great rest of your day.